Enclave is a somewhat unique action-adventure title hailing from all the way back to 2002. Unique in that it can be difficult to compare to many such titles of the era. Most fantasy action-adventure titles of the time would either be heavily puzzle-based or feature a cooperative mode to keep things fresh, and Enclave did neither. It was also not very feature-rich, with little true loot system or level-up system to flesh things out in a traditional way. This left reviewers cold to it, and any planned continuation to the series quickly went away. So, was this title overlooked? It's easy to see this was a limited production and the developers tried to make a sound game despite this, but it's difficult to argue against some of the lack of features. Let's get into it. The setting of the game takes place long after a great war, in which the demonic armies of the Dark Lord Vitar were held at bay and their lord defeated by the wizard Zale, who in the process created a rift in the land, cutting the world off. Now the rift is beginning to heal, with a few locations where it is once again passable. The demonic horde is attempting to finish what it long ago started. From go, you are presented with two campaigns, Light and Dark, which run independent of one another and have you playing each side of the war. The Light campaign sees you in the role of a prisoner who happens to make a name for himself during a sudden attack and is given a chance at redemption. Collecting followers along the way, the campaign sees you attempt to gather allies, halt the horde, and prevent the resurrection of Vitar. The Dark campaign, meanwhile, has you assassinating key targets and waging fortress attacks and defenses in the name of your mistress until the last bastion of the light in the land, the Queen of Selnheim, is dead. It is a simple story mostly told through short cutscenes and blurbs on loading screens, but also pretty basic. Good guys find ways to defeat evil, bad guys find a way to kill off good and put down bastions of hope. In terms of how the campaigns themselves play out, the Light campaign is clearly the beginner choice. It's easier to start with, escalating into larger and tougher battles against far deadlier opponents, with plenty of little boss fights along the way. The Dark campaign, meanwhile, is a mixed bag. While the locations you visit and encounter designs are more varied and difficult, with a few exceptions, and you can tell the developers had some fun making up scenarios for the campaign, it also feels very unfinished, especially toward the end. Similar to the gameplay. There's things to love here. There's a lot of freedom of movement, some fun weapon and character selections, and it can be quite fun when everything works as it should. Problem is, getting it to work as it should. For starters, this is how the game works. You start out with one class for each campaign. As you complete the campaigns, more classes for each side are unlocked, either through story or through finding and saving them within levels, leaving 6 main classes for each side, which each play the same as their counterparts, even if they look very different from one another. The fighter is a big, strong brute with the most health and melee damage, but limited speed and ranged attacks. The archer has less health and limited melee, but ungodly ranged options. Short options are balanced ones, with similar melee capability as fighters, decent health, improved range capability, and blazing speed. Engineering types are tough and carry only semi-useful bombs, retaining only middling melee capability and mediocre range and speed. Then you have the wizard and summoner types, who are basically the same, that they have weak melee and use staffs. The difference being the summoners get the option for a summoning staff and are a bit faster, and wizards are a bit tougher. On top of these, there are bonus characters to unlock for beating the main campaign and collecting enough gold. A stone golem who can beast through melee but gets destroyed by everything else, and a droid, of all things, which is basically just a nigh-invincible thing with a rocket launcher. So yeah, there's actually a decent variety of playstyles here. Where things get strange is the loot system. See, the game doesn't have a standard loot or level up system. What happens is you collect preset gold throughout levels, which is saved throughout the campaign. With this gold you equip armor, weapons, and equipment. You don't pay for it per se, it's more like a temporary trade-in, which you must balance the equipment you want with the gold available. You can balance armor with melee weapons, swords, axes, and hammers with shields for melee classes, a dagger for the rest, or the staff for magical classes, with ranged weapons, bows for archers, crossbows for everyone but magic types, and finally the amount and type of ammo you wish to carry. It's an odd system to say the least, one that's a cute idea and a serviceable one which gives incentive to explore levels and do well so as to avoid checkpoints, which cost collected gold to activate, but also one which isn't entirely balanced or at all better than the systems in place in competitors. It can be easy to either gimp yourself in the game or become an overpowered monstrosity. Players who don't explore every nook and cranny eventually being outdone by enemies who have gotten major equipment upgrades, or players who do, breezing through the game with ease. Also note is that you keep this gold throughout and can choose to go back to old levels, which well-equipped characters will destroy. Then there's the gameplay itself. There's a lot of freedom of movement here, which added with the ability to block and number of ranged weapons can make some encounters, or strings of encounters, rather fun and tense. Unfortunately, the game suffers horrible hit detection. It's not always clear what hits or misses, or why, and a player is left to just keep bobbing and weaving and hoping their attacks eventually get through. The ability to bob and weave like this removes some of the frustration that this might cause, but it's no less a poor design which could have, probably should have, completely crippled the game. Ranged weapons fare better in their hit detection and can be very overpowered for both sides. Players will very quickly discover that archers and magic users carrying certain staffs are easily the most dangerous things in the game, capable of annihilating you in a split second of carelessness, in stark contrast to basically everything else in the game, which is a strange mechanic when you get down to it. The game is fair. You see, the enemies you'll face throughout each campaign are largely those you'll play as in the opposing campaign, with a few exceptions. They carry the same equipment upgrades you can find, which means they can be just as over or underpowered as you, and you can be very, very overpowered. Then there's the bosses, which are surprisingly fun to face off against if rarely truly difficult. Most require more than blunt force, and each requires more care than typical opponents. If nothing else, they each offer up some interesting designs. Environments too, each colorful and atmospheric, with wildly varying designs. The level design here is solid, especially for its time and limitations. How it holds up today? That's another question. This comes from an era of actual levels, where encounters were designed to be played through a certain way, whereas today level design is trying to reach more and more for the open world style of play. The latter has its merits, but it can't be denied this title has a tighter grip on design, though don't confuse this for being completely straightforward. Graphics today are serviceable and little more. There's a nice styling to be had with some truly unique designs I'm surprised got past the concept art phase, but it's obviously nothing to compare with today on the technical level. How then to recommend Enclave? There's definite fun to be had if you're a fantasy or hack and slash fan. It won't offer up the difficulty or polish of a Dark Souls style game, and it doesn't have the loot systems or level up tables of most similar games, but that does all make for a game that is incredibly easy to pick up and play. If you're looking for a real challenge or a great level of polish, look elsewhere. But if you want a nice little romp through a classic good versus evil tale where the cliches don't tend to bog down the rest of the game, there's some entertainment to be had here.